Good morning. I'm here to tell you that mobile is a giant pain in the ass. Who thinks so? Have you guys found this? Yeah, huge pain in the ass, right? For 15 or 20 years, after 15 or 20 years, we finally figured out how this web thing works. Feels like, wow, we got it pretty confident. And then all comes along like these little phones that suddenly make us have to rethink all this stuff. And not just phones, but a bajillion other devices that seem to be coming along just every few weeks, right? We have all these platforms, all these devices, all these screen resolutions. And we have to think about, wow, do we target the web? Do we think about native apps, some combination, hybrid apps? Which platforms? So just when we're trying to just as we're getting our head around the web, all this stuff seems to blow up, right? So I've got some suggestions about how to approach it, but I think also some suggestions about how we might not have been thinking about this the right way. You know, when any new technology comes around, you sort of make some best guess assumptions about how it's going to work. And after time, we tend to settle into those initial assumptions, and they become a little bit stubborn sometimes. And I would say that a lot of our initial assumptions haven't actually turned out to be right. And it's time to sort of let go of these myths that we've sort of settled into. So I want to dispel 7 stubborn, and I would say deadly mobile myths about mobile. So friends, if you're ready, I'd like to start with the big one, which is that mobile users are rushed and distracted. You hear this all the time. Oh, we have to design specifically for information snacking, sort of stunted 10 to 20 second sessions of activity. And to be sure, that is part of our mobile experience. You know, we are in a rush and distracted sometimes when we use these. But mobile isn't just mobile. It's not just on the go, right? Mobile is on the couch, in the kitchen, in a 3-hour layover, times when we have plenty of attention. All of us know from our own personal experience, there have been plenty of times where we're just staring at the phone, working on something for like 30 minutes at a time, right? Plenty of attention. And not just sort of those settings that I mentioned, but maybe the little boys and little girls room. Turns out 40% of people admit to using their phones in the bathroom, or as my friend Luke Wroblewski likes to say, 60% are liars. But this idea that mobile users are always rushed and distracted leads to a sort of a damaging set of follow-on assumptions. There's this knee-jerk assumption that mobile means the light version, right? And which is logical if you go with this rushed thing. It's like, well, if you don't have much attention, then just have to pare it down to the very bare minimum core use cases for this mobile use case. And the thing is it turns out that if you look at actual surveys of retail experiences, for example, a recent survey last fall said 85% of people expect a retail experience, an e-commerce experience on the phone to be as complete as it is on the desktop. So user expectations are outpacing this idea of this light version of mobile. The people want the full experience. Our job is not to willy-nilly strip out useful features. I think all of us have had the experience where we go to a website on our phone and it looks great. Right? The designers have done a terrific job of making this look fantastic on the small screen, but wait a second, taking out the exact piece of content or feature that I'm looking for, right? You know the drill. Swipe, 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 swipe. Oh, here it is. Full desktop version. And then you're swimming in this giant desktop layout that undoes all that great design thinking that went into the small screen version. We do everything on our phones now. Anytime that you say, this is not mobile content, nobody's going to want to do this on their phone, you are wrong. You know? But that idea that we can sort of make those assumptions about user intent and mindset for mobile leads to decisions like we see at Alibris.com. So Alibris, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of like what Amazon started out as, shipping books and CDs, videos, video games. But the thing that makes it different, what you would go to Alibris for instead of Amazon, is this rare and collectible books thing. All this huge catalog of out-of-print books. It's great. So Alibris, like most companies, created a mobile experience, but actually a separate website. And look what's missing. No rare and collectible books. Now, in an interview with the New York Times, it was about, simplicity in mobile. The manager of this product, sort of bragging, said, wow, we wanted to create a simple experience for our users. And so one of the things that we lopped out was rare and collectible books. By the way, the one reason you would go there instead of Amazon for two reasons. One is we thought that people who were on the go wouldn't have the time to do a search for something as expensive and complex as a rare book, and also wouldn't want to make that financial investment. Wouldn't want to really put down the money. Here's the thing, friends. eBay sells over 2,000 cars every week through their mobile apps. Several Ferraris a month. This is where I get my private jets, by the way, too, so you know. You can't just assume that because I'm on a small screen, I'm not interested in spending time or spending money. In this case, this is denying a purchase to mobile users. You can't buy a rare book through the mobile version of the website. You have to go out to the full desktop version, as if desktop is the real web. We'll talk about that in a second. But then again, who cares, right? You can always go to the desktop version of the site, or when you go home, go to the desktop. Mobile is just a niche, right? It's a convenience. Not anymore. It turns out, a pair of studies from last year tell us that 28% of US mobile web users almost never use the desktop. Mostly use the mobile web. 28% of people who use the web on mobile in the US, I'm not talking about developing countries or other places where those numbers are far higher. For these folks, their phone is the primary browser. That amounts to 11% of US adults. 25 million people in this country are using the phone as their primary browser. There's a digital divide issue here. Increasingly, as people are forced to decide, wow, can I afford? If I can only afford one connection or one screen, they're choosing their phone. And so that means that for these people, if you care about reaching them, you're reaching them on the phone. If you think that any of your content is important enough to reach these 25 million people, it's got to be formatted for the phone. So here's the lesson. I've sort of been talking about this a bit. This myth that mobile is less, or the lite version, is wrong. Mobile content and features should be at least at the same level as any other platform. Mobile isn't lite. Mobile isn't less. This happened last week. You guys know this guy? So Jacob Nielsen, as many of you know, a very well-known usability guru for the web, has contributed a lot of great thinking to the web about how to make it a more usable, simple experience, issued his mobile guidelines, and they boiled down to this. Build a separate mobile website, a completely different mobile experience, cut content, and cut features that are not core to the mobile context. And friends, I think that making assumptions, as I've said, about what this mobile context is, that it's on the go, isn't right. He said for the few people who need more content, offer links to the full site, the real site, the desktop site. So what does that look like in practice? Well, last fall, Jacob had also offered some specifics. The feature set, he said, for mobile screens, mobile experiences, should be much smaller for a mobile set than for a desktop site. So with this example, a company's full site, its real site, typically includes PR information and investor relations sections, but this info should be eliminated from the mobile site. No, Jacob, no. Why? Because I'm on a small screen. Am I not interested in PR information and investor relations? It might be that I'm never interested, in which case maybe it shouldn't be on the desktop site either. But making assumptions about that I want to change because I'm just on a small screen, and that's really all we know about mobile. It doesn't mean that I'm on the go, or I don't know why it's always in public transportation is the example, right? Oh, is there always going to be in public transportation using the phone? You really don't know. What he's doing here is he's making a mistake of confusing device context with user intent. I don't know where you are. I don't know what your intention is. All I know is you're on a small screen. And just because I'm on a small screen doesn't mean that I want to do less. It's like an author saying, oh, well, for the paperback version, I should chop out chapters because it's a smaller book. You can make assumptions about how people are going to use this device. It lends itself to certain activities better than a desktop or laptop and vice versa. And so you can create separate experiences that prioritize for those use cases, but don't cut it out. Don't keep me from buying that rare book. So I would say that Jacob Nielsen's advice here, which frankly is not an uncommon position, goes back to this basic assumption, but I would say it's wrong and damaging. It's not terrible for a transitional approach, but as the goal, we should be thinking about providing full web experiences, full content to people no matter what platform they're on. Now, I will say though that basically what I'm getting at is you can't use a user's sort of false notions of a user's context to avoid hard design challenges. And frankly, that's what it smacks of. It's not easy to have rich, complex experiences on a small screen, but it doesn't mean that we should just punt. So simplicity is great. I don't want to say that we shouldn't have simplicity, but that also is not necessarily at odds, frankly, with complexity. I think we should embrace complexity. That's this next myth I want to talk about. Complexity is awesome. Complexity is what gives richness to our lives and to our applications and websites. You know, complexity is what helps us as designers help our customers and users solve hard problems. Complexity is great. Users don't want dumbed down apps. They want uncomplicated apps. So I'm making a distinction here between complexity and complication. Complexity is about richness, about fullness of information. Complication is making that hard to do. So our job as designers is not to eliminate complexity, but to make complexity as uncomplicated as we possibly can. So bucking the myth of this distracted user means figuring out how to create complex but comprehensible interfaces. Now, uncomplicating complexity is hard to do, but it really means sort of figuring out what a user doesn't want or need to be exposed to, not because they're on a small screen, but just as a matter of the goal they're trying to accomplish. So if you're building an app to fly an airplane, it might be logical to start here, but realize that your customers may prefer something like this. You know, what's their goal? Help them get there as soon as possible and paper over unnecessary complexity. This really depends on you got to do some user research to find out what their goals are. You may have very different apps as a result. This is my favorite weather app. It's called Umbrella, the simplest weather forecast, and it answers the question, do I need an umbrella today? I am the perfect audience for this app. I don't care about what the weather's going to be like tomorrow. I certainly don't care about barometric pressure and dew points. I just want to know, please, am I going to get wet if I go out without an umbrella today? Now, frankly, not everyone, and probably most people, wouldn't even consider this a weather app. You know, my stepfather, Ken, is somebody who spends, I don't know, 18 hours a day in front of the Weather Channel. You know, he wants to know about the dew point and the barometric pressure. Hey, there's this low pressure system over Brazil. What's going on with that? For him, this is not a weather app. This is condescending and patronizing, right? Weather is enormously complex, and he wants to be exposed to it in all the complexity. So already we have two very use cases. We're very different users. You know, this is my app, this is not Ken's app. And I'll talk a little bit about how we can sort of make him happier. But I just want to say really that managing complexity doesn't always or even usually mean stripping out features until the project is toothless. You know, mobile doesn't mean less. It doesn't mean light, as I've said.